guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. So a lot of news to get to today. You may or may not have seen a bunch of new champions are dropping in patch 3.2.0. And man, this is a game-changing group of champions. I have some good news and some bad news that I want to share, kind of giving my opinions on this batch before we jump into it. On the good news first, man, some really sick champions. When I said game-changing, I wasn't being hyperbolic. There are a lot of champions between really solid revivers and decreased defense, decreased attack, all kinds of really crucial components to any successful team in terms of really solid debuffers and incredible nukers and just more and more in Epic too, Epic champions as well. Some cleansers, really a lot of fundamental positions in this batch. So man, cheers to Plarium for adding some amazing champions in this batch that you guys are going to want to get your hands on. However, the bad news, so good news, a lot of good champions, we're going to talk about them in today's video. Bad news is, good God, boy, do we need book farming, Plarium. I mean, look at the books on these champions. Legendary books are harder to get than legendary champions in this game. I asked Cirilla in our interview about legendary books, but just look at this, guys. Look at this. It's a big issue right now inside the game. You know, it really is. Look at all these books. And to me, like every single time I see a level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, it's just like, I don't know, $20 a pop. That's how ridiculous these books are. I think in the shop they're like $30 US dollars per book. That's ridiculous, man. So it's not the rarity of the champions necessarily. It's the books, man. How can you have a game where there's no way to farm the number one resource you need to upgrade and get the full value out of these champions? It's just an RNG based in clan boss. That's really the only dependable way, and then grinding advanced quests, for months to get a couple books. Or grinding, tag team arena for months to get a couple books. There needs to be easier ways to farm books inside the game. We've been saying this for a while, but really, with this group of amazing champions, it drives the point home. Look at all of these levels. This is a big issue right now. I know Plarium is already aware, but good God, something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. We are at our tipping point because when you add so many amazing characters, amazing champions, hats off to the designers and to the game designers here. We don't see actually see the art of these champions. They're not in the index yet. Hats off to them. But man, let us upgrade them. Let us try them out. Let us use the champions that you're working so hard to add to the game. All right, rant over there. So good news and the bad news. Awesome champions. Books, man. People are leaving the game because of books. Gotta stop this right now. It's a great game, but fix books, right? I want to start with the end first because the daily login reward expansion. This will now be the last addition to the daily login rewards, but fear not, doesn't mean you'll no longer get anything. Instead, the final tier will reset and repeat after you've claimed the final reward. You won't lose access to the previous tiers either. All daily login rewards available until now still remain, and the final tier is merely added to the very end, much like we've done in the past. Okay, so basically, daily login rewards in perpetuity. There we go. Forever. Miscellaneous. More slots for your champion collection in the artifact storage. Yay! Champion collection will now go from 200 to 300 slots. Artifact storage from 700 to 1,000 slots. Thank God, man. This is great news. With the caveat, there's always good and bad here. This is the theme of the video, right? And it's gonna come at a cost, right? It's gonna cost gems, Plarium. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that we have this. For those of you who've been playing for, I don't know, it took me about 6 months, maybe even closer to a year, I don't know, to get to the point where I'm just drowning in artifacts. I probably have 1,500 artifacts on my account overall, but they're just muled on champions, and that's no fun, and it's really a pain. Clan boss battles will always start on manual mode rather than auto battle. Golf clap, thank you very much. I think that's a great change as well. All right, here we go, guys. The champions. I'm gonna try not to spend 45 minutes on reviewing these champions. King Garage. is a legendary, trying to make it fit the screen here, I apologize. A legendary Force Affinity attack champion. He's a nuker, okay? Try not to, I like that they added the books to this, but it reminds me of how difficult it's going to be to upgrade these freaking champions. So he has a kind of a cool stun, or the chance increases by the turn meter on the A1, attacks one enemy 4 times, and each critical hit has a 50% chance of decreasing the cooldown of Gore Maker, which is his A3. Okay, so his A3 is an AoE attack. Will ignore 20% of each target's defense. Will ignore a further 5% of target's defense for each buff on the target, and that's on a 3-turn cooldown. Something tells me that this dude is going to be really good in, all around, providing his multipliers are solid, and that's what we don't know here, so I'm not going to spend endless time speculating on who's going to be the best nuker, because we don't know how hard they're going to hit yet. We can't see their base stats, and even if we could see their base stats, Plarium hides their multipliers behind, under the hood, so to speak. We don't know until we actually try these champions out. However, just a hunch, I think this guy's going to be a solid nuker. It's pretty cool that he ignores more defense for each buff on the target against defensive teams in the arena. And obviously, because of this passive, War Machine increases this champion's speed by 6 and crit damage by 7 for each enemy this champion kills in a round, and stacks up to 30 and 35. That's really cool. Whenever an enemy champion is revived, fills the champion's turn meter by 30% for each revived enemy, and then places an increased attack and an increased crit damage on this champion for 1 turn. Really, really strong passive here, guys. I like this champion. I think he has the potential. Next up is Roxem. Roxem is another kind of guy. It's kind of like Aox, or Aox the Remembered. It kind of looks like one of those type of champions. Almost not even a lizard man, like a new faction, even though he is a lizard man. He's Magic Affinity. He's another nuker. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance of filling this champion's turn meter by 10%. Also has a chance of placing a perfect veil on this champion. So all of his abilities are predicated on veils. You can see on a 3-turn cooldown, Jungle Ambush attacks one enemy, fills this champion's turn meter by 50%. Also has a stun or a sleep, depending on if he's under veil, but he places a perfect veil on himself for 2 turns at the end of this attack, if he's attacking without a veil. Kind of a complicated character that I think you're just going to have to find the right synergy for him. Ideally, another Veil or Perfect Veil champion. What is her name there? Rector Drath is actually kind of a cool champion to put with this champion, because they're putting the Veils on champions every single turn, which is pretty cool. So that kind of came to mind immediately. Flicker Step is A3, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance, you can see on a 4-turn cooldown, of placing a decreased defense and a weaken. And decreases Jungle Ambush by 2 turns. So this takes it from a 3 to a 1-turn cooldown, or, ostensibly takes it off cooldown totally. Pretty cool. And then that's while under a Veil or Perfect Veil. While not under a Veil or Perfect Veil, only attacks one enemy, lands those debuffs, and then places the Perfect Veil. So, again, kind of a complex champion, but pretty cool nonetheless. I am not as excited on Roxem as I am about King Garage. But, Garog. But that's going to, play out in time. Iron Brago here is a Spirit Affinity a defense orc champion. So a defense-based champion, our first non-nuker here, has a pretty cool ability here on his A2, right? Has a decreasing buffs on the A1, whatever. Fearless Charge. Ignore the cooldowns before you put yourself into I think that's a 4-turn cooldown. It's bugged here on the image. Can you guys see that? It looks like a 4 to me. Places an increased defense buff on all allies for 3 turns, then attacks one enemy. Has a chance of landing a stun. But wait a second here. So a 3-turn increased defense on a 3-turn cooldown with the book? That is already really, really cool. Attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a Provoke for 1 turn. Also places a decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns if Iron Brago is under an increased defense buff. Which... ideally he'll always be under an increased defense buff, and then increases the defense of all allies by 10% of this champion's defense, and then has a defense aura of Doom Tower battles by 34%. Dude, this guy could be one of the best Doom Tower supports in the game. Mark my words. Really cool champion. So that's it for legendaries. I'm happy about that. We need more good epics, and they actually deliver on more good epics, certainly here. Melga Steel Girdle is a dwarf. Sounds like a dwarf name, right? Spirit Affinity HP-based champion. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance, make it a 75% chance, removing 1 random debuff from a random ally on the A1. A shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. Also a continuous heal on a 3-turn cooldown. And there we go, guys. A reviver. Nice to see these non non-legendary, non-void revivers being added to the game. There's quite a few here. One really good one coming up. Ascendant revives 2 random allies with 20% HP and 20% turn meter, also with a shield equal for 2 turns equal to 30% of their max HP. Pretty solid support, especially if you need a reviva here on Melga Steel Girdle. Chancellor Yasmin. Ascendant attacks one enemy, places an extra hit if the target has no active buffs. Whatever. This is a support Bannerlord. Heals all allies by 40% of their max HP. Heals by 60% if the ally has less than 50% HP. On a 2-turn cooldown. A lot of people not noticing this. Dude, she's going to be a very, very, very good healer. Very good. 60% heal if they're less than 50% HP on every 2 turns. That's really, really solid. That's really solid. Think about it. Apothecary has the 2-turn at 35%. We're getting a 40 or 60%. We're also getting a 50%, make it a 75% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies, then placing a sleep debuff for 1 turn on all enemies who have active buffs on a 4-turn cooldown. Okay, so Lulling Chant is but I think this champion's going to be a sneaky good healer just because of the 2-turn cooldown. If it was a 3-turn cooldown, meh, whatever, but 2 turns, that's a lot of heals being added to the ally who needs it the most, right? So Yoggoth. Undead Horde HP based champion again here. We have attacks one enemy 3 times, Giant Slayer candidate, chance at increasing the duration of 1 random debuff on the target by 1 turn. Okay, attacks all enemies, has a 60, make it 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Also has a 75% chance at placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns on a target who receive the provoke debuff from the first skill. Okay, immediately makes him a little bit less interesting for Clan Boss because of the, I love the decreased attack, but provoke obviously won't land there. Whenever this champion is attacked, heals all allies by 50% of the damage received, 25% against bosses, and then the passive here, 2 passives, only 2 active abilities. So really, you could put this champion maybe in a shield set, stack up a ton of HP, have the decreased defense and the provoke, and make it like a really good support tank for dungeons, for progression, right? And a pretty nice passive heal. And then when attacked, places a leech debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. And I just wanted to reread this one real quick. Who do receive the provoke, yeah. Otherwise, Clan Boss Specialist, but you can't place a decreased attack, but still, the leech, right? When attacked, places a leech debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. If the attacker is under provoke debuff placed by this champion, also has a 70% chance, make it 100, of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on the attacker by 2 turns. Occurs once per attack. I gotta say, Vagoth seems like a really, really good support champion. If this decreased attack wasn't predicated on the provoke, then I would say a beast Clan Boss too, but still really good champion overall, not to take anything away from them. Armina here is a magic attack base barbarian champion, epic obviously, has a stun on the A1, has an AoE here on the A2, has a 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown of placing the decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Steals 7.5 of the turn meter from the targets under decreased defense debuffs. Dude, really solid, right? First of all, it's a 3-turn cooldown, decreased defense, AoE. Boom. We have a few of these champions being added. So all of a sudden, champions like Tyrell, champions like War Maiden, Stag Knight, Dagger are a little bit less, even Dagger's at 80% chance or 75% chance. These champions are a little bit less crucial to having a successful account now because there's going to be, I think, 3 more epic champions added with a 3-turn decreased defense. And then this 75% turn meter steal on an AoE attack. Think about Armina against spiders. It's almost going to be like an immediate turn all over again, right? Decrease the turn meter of all enemies by 20%, has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn on enemies who have their turn meters depleted. This is a spider specialist, guys. Fills his champion turn meter by 10% for each time an enemy receives a stun debuff. Dude, the synergy between trampling rampage, filling turn meter, decreased defense, a stun on the A3, the Morge, a turn meter fill for every stun. Amazing spider champion, I think, guys. What about you? Ursula the Mourner. Bannerlord, here she is, guys. Here she is. Really cool champ, right? Attacks one enemy, has a 40, make it a 55% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter on the A1, okay. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, also has a 75% chance of an increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. So the old decreased attack, increased attack on an AoE attack, support champion, so this is not a nuker. So I'm expecting very little damage, but still to have the nice decrease and increase. You know, did I say? Wait, 10, 20, okay, so 75 and 7, no, 70, 100% chance, and then a 75% chance. I wish it was, wait a second, I'm an idiot, my bad. 100% chance for both of these, my bad. All right, so revives all dead allies. So good to have the decrease and the increased attack on a 3-turn cooldown. Very, very solid to have that on an epic champion. I'm not going to say that I don't think any epic champion has that ability. So really cool. And then check this out, Requiem. Requiem for a Dream, pretty good movie, pretty kind of creepy movie. Anybody see it? Anyway, revives all dead allies with 75% HP, then fills a turn meter by 50%, also plays a 60% increased defense and a 25% strength and buff on all allies for 3 turns? What? That's a sick revival, guys. Speed and Doom Tower battles by 24%. I gotta tell you guys, she is a void. More difficult to get. I hear ya. Ursula the Mourner is a really good, I'm gonna call her a top 5 epic, guys. Am I exaggerating there? Top 10? That's a really powerful revive. Revive all with the 75% HP, 50% turn meter, increased defense, strengthen on all allies, even if they're not revived. The increased defense and strengthen are buff on all allies for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. That's really solid, guys. Annex. Attacks one enemy 2 times, decreased defense. Okay. Attacks one enemy 2 times, decreased accuracy and poison. Okay, for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Really solid here. Thinking Clan Boss. Attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of placing a weakened debuff for 2 turns. Heals its champion by 50% of the damage inflicted. Clan Boss. Clan Boss Specialist, NX. Places an increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns when their HP drops below 75%. Nice. And then an increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns when their HP drops below 50%. Grants an extra turn when this champion's HP drops below 10% on a 5-turn cooldown there on the passive. Pretty cool. I love this name, guys. Who's the guy or gal who thinks of the names of these champions? Fakarin the Fat. Come on. Fakarin the Fat. I love it, dude. All right, Spirit Affinity. And check it out. Attacks one enemy, has a decreased defense. Again, for 2 turns on the A1. Solid, right? 50% chance, not bad for an A1. Attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of placing an HP burn in 2 poison debuffs for 2 turns on the A2. Has an increased crit rate and an increased crit damage buff on all allies except this champion for 3 turns. Then all allies except this champion will attack 1 target enemy. So an ally attack and beat down on a 4-turn cooldown. Wait a second, that's really solid too. Good God, Fokker the Fat, man. Reminds me of like Meet the Parents. This is gonna be the movie episode of New Champions here. Anyway, increased crit rate and increased crit damage on all allies except this champion for 3 turns. Then then all allies except this champion will attack 1 target enemy. That's really cool. That's a strong ally attack, especially for an epic champion. We're getting the increased crit rate and increased crit damage. You could build an arena team around this champion, right? And what you could do is kind of a blender team, AoE attack champions. You could build them all the 70% crit rate because you're getting that 30% crit rate. Put them all in as much crit damage as you can. Crit damage on the gauntlets. And then you have the crit damage too. Man, this is a really good ally attack arena blender champion. Deflects 20% of incoming damage this champion receives onto all allies. I don't know about that. It will spread equally around amongst all allies. I guess it's not bad, right? But it is an attack-based champion. Doesn't seem like it does a lot of damage, so kind of interesting there on that passive. Duck the Pierced. This is a magic defense orc champion. Attack one enemy 2 times, decrease accuracy, okay? Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, also has a 100% chance of placing an increased defense debuff, decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on each critical hit. So on a 3-turn cooldown, provided you're not going against Force Affinity, that's 100% chance of getting a decreased defense and a decreased attack on the same ability. Stagnite-esque, right? And then he has a Provoke for 1 turn on the target enemy. Also has a 75% chance of placing a Provoke debuff for 1 turn on 2 random enemies. Places a Reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns and an Unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. So a really strong kind of Provoke ability. Granted, it is 1 or 2 targets on a 4-turn cooldown as well. Pretty cool champion to have. Again, the decreased defense, decreased attack. Second champion we've seen so far with a 3-turn decreased defense and has the decreased attack there. Sanguina is a magic support Sacred Order champion. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target. Plays a block debuffs on all allies for 1 turn and a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks 1 enemy and then has a 100% chance when booked of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. Removes all debuffs from all allies except this champion. A pretty good cleanse. Transferring debuffs from this champion and then removing all debuffs from all allies on a 4-turn cooldown. Also has the block buffs for 1 turn and continuous heal. Really solid support champion. Old Hermit Jorg. Attacks 1 enemy HP burn. On the A2, 50% increase attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. Turn meter fill by 20% on a 3-turn cooldown. Revives. Another Reviver, Orc support, an Orc support champion. So we have a Revive Dwarf Epic and a Revive Orc Epic now. Revives 2 random allies with 60% HP, then fills their turn meter by 40%, then places a perfect Veil buff on them for 2 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. Another Reviver, sign me up. Ugo is the last champion we'll talk about today. It is a support champion from the Ogryn tribe, Magic Affinity. Attacks 1 enemy, has a 35% chance of placing a Leech. The chance increases by 5% for each enemy alive. Okay. Attacks all enemies on the A2. Has a 100% chance of placing a decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 75% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. The chance of placing the block buffs debuff increases by 5% for each enemy alive. Another decreased defense on a 3-turn cooldown, but also bringing with it not the decreased attack or increased attack or whatever the other champions have, but this time a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. On a 3-turn cooldown. This is a very, very strong decreased defense, guys. Wow. Step aside, Tyrell, on your 4-turn cooldown decreased defense. I halfway kid, but these are some real versatile options for a decreased defense option on your team. Removes all hero reduction debuffs from all allies, then removes 1 random debuff from all allies, then heals all allies by 20% of this champion's max HP. If all allies are dead, revives them with 50% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50% instead, all on a 4-turn cooldown. So at first I was like, well, that's so niche, man. Like, when are they going to be the last one standing? But heck, if you build them to be super, it gives you some real reasoning to build this AoE attack champion who is a support champion with just to be incredibly robust tank. And then whether the last champion standing, boom, you revive all of your dead allies with 50% HP and a 50% turn meter fill. Not too bad. And then has a increased speed buff and a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever this champion is the last living ally. Whenever this champion's last living ally is killed. So block damage. I gotta say, really, really cool Reviver and Cleanser, kind of, and Debuffer. Man, these are some really, really good champions. Despite the book issue, which is a real issue, I'm really excited about this batch, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe here if you like the content. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. And as always, take care, guys.